Hello, everybody. My name is Angelo Cortez. I am a District 5 community member, and today I'm here with Michael Rutledge of Sarita Aerial Contractors, and we're in Coolidge, Arizona. Michael, would you like to tell us a little bit about the business?
Yeah, good morning, Angelo, and thanks for having us this morning. Sarita Aerial Contractors has been operating as an aerial application business here in this area continuously since 1966. We do both liquid and dry applications and aerial firefighting out of this very airfield. And I'm one of the pilots here at Sarita.
That sounds great. So what exactly is an aerial application?
There's a lot of products that can go on different crops, both dry products, liquid products, and they can be applied by several means, ground vehicles, by hand, backpacks, different scales. Aerial application is just another method of putting crop protection products on different plants to positively affect yields, kind of fight disease pressure and the various things that affect growing patterns of the crops here in the area.
Okay, so can you tell me why it's called aerial application instead of crop dusting?
Crop dusting is actually a dated term that was used in the 1940s through the 1960s in the industry when the predominant product that was dispensed out of the airplanes was actually sulfur dust, hence the term crop dusting. It's a very limited use now, but as the industry and the aircraft have progressed and modernized, a lot of the liquid and the metered and computerized dispensing products have eliminated the actual need for dust, which was used early on in the industry with boll weevil and gypsy moths and stuff like that. So it's really a dated term. Aerial application or an aerial applicator is now kind of the preferred term for what we do as an industry. Crop duster is used kind of as a legacy badge of honor, but it doesn't accurately depict what we do with the airplanes now.
So what types of aerial applications do you provide?
We can do a multitude of applications. We can do both dry products in the form of different kinds of fertilizers, which is granular, that come out of the airplane. For the dry stuff, we can also do seeding to kind of enrich the crops with nitrogen, maybe perhaps at the end of the season through the winter growing season. We can also do liquid applications, and through that we can also do herbicides, insecticides for insect pressure, also different kinds of chemicals that will inhibit fungus or any sort of other diseases that might be on the crops.
So what is the main difference between pesticides and fertilizers?
Fertilizers are a beneficial, generally a dry product that enhances the growth of different plants. That's usually in a granular, kind of looks like small popcorn that comes out of the bottom of the airplane. It's dry, it's usually applied prior to good rain in this area, or maybe just a little bit after a good rain. And just like fertilizer you'd put on your garden, it's the exact same thing. It just enhances the growth, provides nutrients that the soil might not otherwise have. Fertilizers can also be distributed in a liquid form, in a liquid nitrogen form, but generally they're dry. Pesticides is a very broad category, and pest to the plants could be insects, adverse insects that are eating the plants, and can be any sort of a disease, a fungus or something that's inhibiting the growth, or any other sort of disease pressure, something in the soil.
So how low do you typically fly when you're applying these pesticides and fertilizers?
Typically the airplane will be between 10 and 15 feet above the highest part of the crops, and will generally fly between 150 and 160 miles an hour. However, every chemical has a label, and that label specifies exactly how high we should be above the canopy of the crop. But generally speaking, 10 to 15 feet is usually what the labels specify.
So how do you protect people and the environment while conducting an aerial application?
Well, first, before anything gets dispensed out of the airplane, we refer to the label on the chemical that's provided for us. And the label provides very specific instructions, not only on the height that the product should be applied, the maximum wind that the product can be applied in, and it also annotates, if there's any hazards to water, animals, air, anything. The label is very, very specific under what conditions and what proximity we can apply the chemicals. So we very strictly adhere to that, both by our own responsibility for the environment and the crops and the local community, but then also it's very regulated. So the state and the Environmental Protection Agency rely on us to apply within the scope of that label. Also, before we go and apply chemicals anywhere, we map it on a digital mapping program, and then we also look at all four sides of the field that we're going to apply it to, and we take note of, if there's any homes nearby, if there's cattle or anything that would be susceptible to the application, both from a chemical reaction standpoint and then also from a nuisance as far as, are we going to be flying over houses? Are we going to disturb some livestock? Anything that could have an adverse effect on the application.
And could you tell me the benefits of aerial spraying?
Aerial application has several benefits. The primary being our ability to respond on very short notice. And also on a given field, if there's disease pressure or insect pressure, a lot of times if that's not caught within 24 to 48 hours, it can have adverse effects, irreversible effects on that particular crop. So the benefit of aerial application is we can take, something like a 100-acre field, and we can have that done same day within, 15 or 20 minutes. Whereas if it were to use another application method, such as a ground tractor, or, if they're trying to do it by hand or something like that, it might take hours and hours or multiple days, depending on the size of the field. So quick response and the ability to complete that field in a very expeditious amount of time is our benefit. Also, if there are conditions in the soil that are not advantageous to ground vehicles, meaning if it's been wet, they can't get vehicles through because it will sink, or if the canopy for whatever crop, we'll take cotton for example, if the canopy has grown to the point, or the plants have grown to the point where the canopy starts closing in and you can't get tracked vehicles through there, a grower or a farmer can lose up to 15 to 20% of their total yield just with what the ground vehicles will trample with their tracks. So aerial application has a lot of benefits, but those are the major ones.
So what crops do you apply these pesticides and fertilizers to?
In this area, cotton is our major crop that we treat. Also lots of alfalfa, oats, wheat, especially during the wintertime, the winter growing seasons, and then corn, of course, in the summertime. There are some odd, every once in a while we'll do an organic crop, and some other specialty crops, some food crops and stuff, some arugula every now and then. But alfalfa, the grasses, and cotton are our predominant crops that we treat.
So how much product can an aerial application plane hold?
The aircraft that we're standing behind right now is an air tractor AT802, which has an 800-gallon hopper. So it can actually hold about 820 gallons of liquid product. Typically in this area, we'll apply anywhere from 3 to 5 gallons of product per acre. So that equates usually to about 120 to 130 acre field that we can apply with one load. Also, if we're using it in the dry configuration, we can carry up to 4,700 pounds of dry product. And typically we'll apply dry products at a rate anywhere between 100 to 150 pounds per acre. So a 35 to a 40 acre job per load is what we can do with the dry configuration.
So as an aerial applicator, what are some of the obstacles and challenges that you are most commonly faced with?
The actual application, every day is a challenge. We absolutely love what we do, but every day is a challenge in that the fields that we treat are always surrounded by power lines, particularly in this area. There's always obstacles in the field, perhaps a standpipe or an outbuilding or something like that. So there's always hazards in the field that we have to pay attention to. We mitigate that by, circling a couple of times and doing good reconnaissance of the field and being aware of what's on the edges and what's in the center. Beyond that is always making conscientious applications, but also being aware of people that might be living adjacent to the field, cattle, livestock, stuff like that. And that's a real challenge, of course, as more homes and more businesses are being built around, what used to be farmland that didn't have any obstacles around it. So currently maneuvering around and making good applications in the midst of kind of growing urban sprawl is currently our biggest challenge.
So what factors do you consider when spraying around areas near homes and structures?
That's one of our biggest concerns when making an application. As I said before we ever get into an airplane, we will map the field and kind of pay attention to where there are structures, the proximity of structures, where people might be, where there might be businesses. all the way to up to and including we might actually drive out to the field rather than just relying on Google Earth or satellite imagery. We might drive out to the field and actually lay eyes on and measure how far, structures and people or livestock may be to the field we're going to spray. If that is going to be a safe application, then one of our other biggest factors is what the wind is doing. We pay very, very close attention to which direction and the velocity the wind is on a particular day prior to that application. And that way we can predict, is people, homes, structures, livestock, is that going to be downwind of the application, or are those homes going to be upwind? And a lot of times we'll elect to not do an application on a particular day just because, the very infinitesimal chance that the wind might actually take that product in an undesired area, or the velocity might be great enough to where we can't guarantee that it's actually going to settle on the crop and the target where we want it to.
And how do you ensure that the pesticides or fertilizers will land on the crop or plant?
That's probably the most critical factor that we use when we're planning an application. Several factors in, like the pre-planning we spoke about. We, number one, look at the relative humidity. We look at what the wind is doing. Is that wind going to be from a direction or a great enough wind speed to where we might have some doubts whether or not the wind is going to carry it off target to exactly where we want. We also apply at a height that's specified on the label. Any higher, and it might get carried off target. Also, we pay attention to things like, is there an inversion? Is it colder at the surface and then warmer, where everything's rising, where we may risk a chemical vaporizing and climbing up into an inversion layer and getting carried off. So there's a lot of weather and atmospheric factors that we take into account before we do an application. And then also the actual application of itself. We make sure that the airplane is at the correct height and the correct speed to make sure that the droplets that are coming out of the booms are the correct droplet size. We actually prefer larger droplet sizes because the wind doesn't shear them so much, and larger droplet sizes have been proven scientifically and through studies to fall more directly onto the crop. We meter and calibrate everything on the airplane to make sure that those droplet sizes remain intact and that they don't get smaller. The smaller the droplet size, it has a tendency to perhaps vaporize and maybe go in a direction we don't want them to. So calibrating the airplane and how we fly the airplane has just as much to do with making sure that the pesticides go on target as the weather considerations. But we combine them both together to ensure that what comes out of the airplane lands exactly where we want it to every time.
And how much training goes into becoming an aerial applicator?
A little known fact, becoming an aerial applicator actually takes longer and requires more training than becoming an airline pilot. It takes years and years, and everybody who's an aerial applicator spent several years on the ground learning the chemicals, learn how to mix them correctly, learn all the hazards of the chemicals, the handling, also everything mechanically about the airplane. So before an aerial applicator, crop duster, but before a pilot actually touches the airplane in the capacity as a pilot, they've already spent several years on the ground learning the farming side of it. And as we'd like to say in the industry, it's about 70% farming and 30% flying. What we use, it's just a tool to apply farming products. The airplane is actually just a minor part of it. So we're different than other commercial pilots in that, we think we look at it from an agricultural perspective and not necessarily a flying perspective, which is why the prerequisites have us spend so much time on the ground learning the actual farming and the chemical portion of it. But beyond that, every aerial applicator does have a commercial pilot's license, just like airline pilots. There are several of us that have airline transport pilot's license, like myself. But there is no low time, or there are no low time pilots doing this job. Everyone is highly experienced. John Pugh, who owns Sarita Aerial Contractors, he's been doing this in this area for 42 years. I've been doing it for about 14 years, and prior to that, I was a military pilot for 30 years. So there's nobody inexperienced doing it. It's not a stepping stone. Everyone that's here flying in an aerial application capacity loves it because we love the area and we love the farming aspect of it. So everybody's very passionate about what we do and professionals.
Now, do I need to be concerned about my pets or livestock while an aerial application is being conducted?
No, and that's a common misconception. As we've discussed earlier, we're very meticulous and conscientious about the application. One of the things is it is an airplane, and at times it can be loud or alarming if you're not accustomed to an airplane flying, relatively closer than you would think an airliner, close to your homes or your pets. However, as we discussed, the application, it goes on target because of all the planning and the method of application. What you will hear is the noise of the airplane, or you may see the airplane turning as we do the application. But there is no drift that's going to be susceptible to homesteads, people in the home, pets. But as I said, we take great pains to make sure that the chemical is applied on target and that we are the requisite distance away from homes, structures, stuff like that. And if there are things like schools, public gatherings, different public areas, we will either pick a day where school's not in session, or, but if we are flying around on our reconnaissance before we spray the field and we see groups of people, a church gathering, social gathering, something like that, we will simply just elect to not do the application, and we'll pick a different day when there aren't gatherings of people.
And what is the key to success when communicating to the public about aerial application?
The key to success truly is education. And we will go to great pains to stop what we're doing and explain to anyone exactly what we're doing. There's nothing dangerous. There's nothing intentionally harmful that we're doing in any part of our application. So both with the general public and citizens on the reservation, we are always happy to explain exactly what we're doing and how we do it. There's a lot of misconceptions on the aerial application industry. The aircraft are not just randomly dispensing poison. As we've discussed throughout the interview, it's a very metered, computerized, deliberate application with safety and the utmost concern that everything that comes out of the airplane goes exactly where we intend it to, with no harmful effects to any people, livestock, or structures that are surrounding. So it truly comes down to, if you have questions, allowing us or reservation personnel to answer those questions, perhaps before jumping to conclusions or assuming that we're intentionally harming. Sometimes it's just airplane noise. So if there's any questions about what we do with the airplane, why we're doing it with the airplane, just provide us the opportunity to explain. We're absolutely happy to do so.
Thank you for your time, Michael. We really did enjoy hearing all of your information, and we look forward to everything you have for us.
Yep.
Thanks
for the interview. I appreciate your time, Angela. Thanks.